think we'll be starting very soon. Our team is, okay, perfect. We have Mera and then we're just waiting for Tom. Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. Well, thank you so much again for coming here and those who are listening today. My name is Isaias Hernandez, and I am the creator of Curb Around Vegan Environmental Educational Platform. Welcome, everyone, to Loop's Circular Conversation Series, where we cover monthly different discussions about sustainability in the industry. And I'm really happy to be meeting and talking to each and every one of you. And Loop has some very exciting topics in the upcoming months that they'll be exploring too. So make sure to tune in for those events. I'd love to give some time for all the panelists to introduce themselves and tell us about the work they do and what they do.
Fantastic. I'll kick it off. It's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting us. So this is Tom speaking. I'm the founder and CEO of TerraCycle and Loop. And for anyone who may not be aware of us, so TerraCycle is we're now in our 18th year as a mission-driven waste management company, really focusing on three things: collecting and recycling hard-to-recycle materials. So everything from dirty diapers to cigarette butts, now nationally in 20 countries. Then to integrating waste back into products, helping companies like, say, Head & Shoulders make their shampoo bottle using ocean plastic. And then we started the journey on Loop just 3 years ago. We're actually right now almost exactly 2 years when we first debuted it to the world at the 2019 World Economic Forum in Davos. So it's incredibly young, but moving very, very, very fast. And Loop is a platform for reuse. A platform where amazing brands, and I won't steal too much thunder from Mera, so we'll let her speak to the brand experience, can create and develop reusable versions of their products. And our role there is sort of to approve to make sure it is reusable, 10 reasonable uses or more. And then working with great retailers, in the US from Kroger and Walgreens, all the way to Europe, Carrefour and Tesco, and many other amazing retailers. In fact, we're actually launching with Loblaw in Canada in just a few days from now, who then make it available to their consumers, online at the beginning and then later in store. And from a consumer experience, you can now buy your favorite brands in reusable packaging through your favorite retailers. And then when you're done, we try to echo the convenience of disposability, where you don't have to wash, don't have to sort, don't have to fill yourself. You just drop it off in the Loop ecosystem, which is also cool because you could say buy at, say, Tesco in the UK, but return to McDonald's, who's also a partner of ours. And then we act as the waste management function of reuse, where we collect the packaging, return deposits, sort them out, clean them, and provide them back to the brands, who then refill them, and then around it goes again. And I'm actually quite thrilled that we have Blandine with us here today to share the panel, who is our general manager of Loop Europe. And Europe's actually been leading the way with Loop. France was the first country that ever launched with Carrefour, first country to launch, first retailer to go online, and now first retailer to go in store. So maybe I'll take a moment here and pass it to my co-panelist Blandine to share a little bit about what's happening, especially in Europe with Loop.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Tom. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. So good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm Blandine Surry. I'm the general manager for Loop in Europe. So I've got the great pleasure of working closely with Tom and the rest of the Loop Global team to bring actually the concept of Loop to life in France and the UK. And as Tom said, we've had a very exciting year in those two markets. In France, moving to launching the Loop model in physical stores, so in 10 Carrefour stores in the Paris region, where now shoppers can actually shop product in durable containers, use them at home, and then return their empty package into the stores themselves. So very strong physical presence in those stores, and it's also a great opportunity for us to obviously scale up the model and reach to a very, very large number of consumers. So it's now present in physical stores and also in the online version of Carrefour in the Paris region. So very exciting. And meanwhile, in the UK, we've launched mid this year in the middle of the pandemic, and nevertheless, a very successful launch of a pilot platform called loopstore.co.uk. So the next step in the UK will be to go in store in the same way with Tesco well, in fact, this year.
Amazing. Should I This is Mera. I think hopefully you can hear me. Hi, everyone. I'm Mera McGrew. I am the founder and CEO of Supply. For those of you who might not be familiar, Supply as our bottle, which I'm here in our fulfillment facility tucked away in a back corner, but as our bottle boldly states, we are more than soap. We are, simply put, the best soap. We are true soap, not a drying detergent. We're the best soap for you and your skin, our planet, and people everywhere. But more than anything, what we are is a global community that is connected through the simple act of hand washing. And every time you wash your hands with Supply, you help us fund water, sanitation, and hygiene initiatives around the world, helping us ultimately improve and save lives. I'm excited to be here sharing with you guys how we're making every wash count and how Loop is a part of that.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for introducing themselves. And I am a very huge fan of Loop. I used to actually be a marketing intern around a year ago. Great organization, great mission, and just seeing the amount of value of products that's being expanded worldwide is something that I really like to see in the sustainability landscape. And so I had a very general question to start off our panel, is just to kind of talk about, 2020 was a year of very exciting ups and downs, to say the least. And as you're all leaders in the sustainable CPG space, what do you think were the biggest wins in the sustainability landscape or the circular economy space?
I mean, this is a great question. I'll jump in first and then pass it to my fellow co-panelists here. But you're absolutely right. 2020 was a very dynamic, both positive and negative year for sustainability. So I'll speak just specifically because sustainability is a very wide range of topics. So I'm going to speak specifically about what we've learned vis-a-vis consumer outlook on sustainability, but then also what's happening in the world of recycling and reuse in the eyes of COVID. So first, the good news, right? COVID is the first time in our modern history that we have, as a human population, taken our foot off the gas of growth. We've lowered production around the world, stayed home, traveled less, all these things. And what's the results been? 2020 will be the first year carbon levels are down year over year, and that hasn't happened ever since we've sort of industrialized. Animals have retreated to where they haven't been typically seen before. Jellyfish in the coast of on the canals of Venice, humpback whales off Montreal, and many, many other examples. And during this time, during the pandemic, we've also increased our reliance on our consumption of disposable goods. In fact, 30% more disposable good purchasing on average in a developed country per capita, linked to us eating takeaway food more than eating in a restaurant, buying more cleaning agents, all the way to the PPE that we wear. So we are way more. I think a huge tailwind to the environmental movement is being created in 2020. Ironic, of course, because during 2020 we weren't good stewards from a generation of waste point of view. Just good stewards by being less ambitious, let's say, in production. But people all over the world are much more enlightened that we do have an impact. I think that's very clear that 2020 has taught us, and that we have to urgently act. And I think you're seeing that in consumer sentiment all over the world, a big leaning in on this entire topic of sustainability. Now, from a recycling point of view and waste, COVID has been really bad. COVID has suppressed oil prices, which makes recyclers less financially competitive against virgin materials. And so I would predict that while during COVID, recycling in many places stopped for health and safety reasons, the way recycling is coming back after COVID is going to be suppressed and diminished compared to where we left it. And over the past 10 years, recycling has been challenged with not just low oil prices, but poor end markets, with China shutting down importation in other countries, and even the quality of our waste from the profitability for recyclers is diminished. So that's sort of the bad news. In reuse, and I'll conclude on this, is it's interesting. It's, I think, created very much a fork in the road where professional reuse models like Loop have done really well, because consumers do trust the health and safety of professional reuse systems. But consumer-driven reuse, as simple as taking your coffee cup back to a Starbucks to be refilled, has been effectively paused, or refill stations in many cases. And so we've seen this sort of fork in the road. The heightened sense is that when consumers do the cleaning and the health and safety, it's a little bit more questionable. Hopefully it'll come back after COVID, but there's a lot of trust in professional reuse, which is very important. So those have continued to surge. And maybe I'd pass it to Mera, maybe, because I think, your industry in specific has had a very interesting sort of COVID moment with just increased relevance of cleaning and so on. So, but that's at least what we've seen in the macro trends.
Can you hear me? If there is something that came out of COVID that is positive, is that we've been shouting from the rooftops about the importance of hand washing since we launched over 4 years ago. And this past year, I think that we're not the only ones. We've heard the CDC, the World Bank, the World Health Organization, every international, local, you name it, leader echoing the same message that our moms have been telling us for ages, and that's to wash your hands. And we certainly have seen people are washing their hands more, and that's a good thing. We should absolutely continue to wash our hands. It's the simple, most cost-effective health intervention in the world. So keep doing it. And that is a positive. I think one of the negatives that's come out of this usage is that if you walk into the grocery store, I live in New York City, if you walk into a bodega, you go to the personal care aisle and you look at soap, almost every single soap bottle comes in single-use plastic. It absolutely doesn't need to. And Supply from day one has said, you know what? We can make a product that's more beautiful, that's refillable, and that feels good, that is a luxury. It can allow people to do the right thing and look good doing it, not have to give anything up. I think that when it comes to answering the question you kind of posed first, though, is what are the challenges this year? What are the wins? I think that one of the things I look at as just a huge win is I can't tell you how many times in the last 5 years since starting on this journey of supply that people have looked at me and said, it's impossible to remake a supply chain. The system is already in place. The world isn't ready for that. And I think that this past year has, if nothing else, taught us that systems can change overnight. Supply chains can shift in an instant. And I think at this point today, we no longer have the luxury of saying we can wait until tomorrow. We can do it today, and we can create a better, brighter, cleaner future. And it can be cost efficient. It can be done in a way that's responsible, that's sustainable, not just for the environment, but for the individuals involved in the supply chain and the individuals who are ultimately consuming it. So I think that my positive takeaway is, yes, some plastic use, PPE, thank you. Some of it actually saves lives. Single-use plastic soap bottles, we don't need them. And when it comes to products that we can innovate around, or that we can learn from how we used to use the product or package the product, let's do it, and let's do it together.
Maybe just to jump, I would echo a lot of what Tom said in terms of the trend, the positive trend that is still absolutely there. And if I bring actually a European perspective on what has been said, I think despite the fact that unprecedented change or disruption rather has been brought by this pandemic, I think there are several signals that sustainability remains an absolute priority and the concern from the planet. And if I take a few examples, we are meeting consumers every single day in the shops, and we are stopping all of them to explain what Loop is about, and the garbage crisis and what difference they can make as a person. And they are 100% engaged in that discussion, because the concern is absolutely there, and the fact that if anything, they've had some time to reflect on their priorities and what they want the future to look like. So I think it's actually a good moment to shake the tree and bring some very innovative solutions, as Mera just said. The other thing that I think is pretty phenomenal is the fact that from a Loop perspective, if we look at Europe, all of our partners are still completely, absolutely full on, committed to making a difference. And the fact that, Carrefour and Tesco, our main partners from a distribution perspective, are making the very bold, big move of, moving from a pilot platform into a physical presence in store and massive disruption in terms of their supply chain and the implementation is a very strong sign of, these trends being there for the long term. And then a final thing is, from a government perspective, I do see, movement, and of course, health concerns are taking priority, and rightly so, in terms of the day-to-day conversation. But still, there's a law that's been passed in France, which actually states that 5% of containers should be reusable by 2023 and 10% by 2027. That's a huge sort of breakthrough, and all of this in the context of a pandemic and a very disruptive year.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think that we're all redesigning, even as a consumer myself, redesigning our relationships with plastic. I think that a lot of us have been demanding brands and organizations to really redesign their relationships with how they design products. And I think that Loop, for example, has been really paving the way to develop these types of products, and Soaply too, by providing products that are good for the planet and good for the ecosystem. So this is something that we kind of continue to carry with ourselves these upcoming years, especially with the pandemic. And, Tom, how has the vision of Loop evolved since 2019, especially the challenges that 2020 brought about? I know that when I was there a year ago, there was a launch with Ulta Beauty. So that was a very exciting thing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the Ulta Beauty platform, which will start as, I believe, loopbyulta.com, is coming live just in a few months from now. So we're super excited about that.
We're excited too.
Yes. Thank you for being a big part of that. So this is the key, by the way, just to sort of highlight, is Loop cannot do any of this on its own. It's a multi-stakeholder coalition of amazing brands and retailers. We happen to be the glue sort of that brings it together, but that is all, right? It has to do with, having a great choice of products. Retailers, what people want to shop, and then the consumer is voting for that by choosing a reusable version versus a disposable version. And so if we think about, sort of the theme of Loop, I wouldn't say there's necessarily like a huge change, but a natural sort of evolution, if you will, or which is, in 2019 or 2018, we were sort of working on getting everything ready behind the scenes. 2019 was all about starting our online testing platforms. In January 2019, we announced the platform. In May 2019, we brought it live in the US with Kroger and Walgreens, and in France with Carrefour as a loopstore.com, which is like an online testing platform, or maboutiqueloop.fr in France. In 2020, it was continuing to expand that, launching, as Blandine mentioned, in the UK with Tesco on loopstore.co.uk. Again, these are all testing platforms. And I think most importantly, starting our first in-store experience with Carrefour as the leading retailer in Paris, starting with 10 stores in the Paris area, actually offering it physically in store. And we also announced our partner that we're launching in Japan, Australia, Canada, Germany, all coming up. In addition, we started diversifying. So we're now at about 100 major consumer product good companies and 15 retailers. But we also announced partnerships with McDonald's, Burger King, Tim Hortons, in the QSR or quick serve restaurant space that are all coming live later this year. And you'll even see things in everything from reusable cloth diapers all the way to clothing, and even things like B2B products, with now partnering with Metro in France on large scale food service type products. So where are we in 2021, right? 2021's major theme is all of our retail partners, or the vast majority, going into in-store deployments in addition to online ones, and building up this physical infrastructure of reuse. So what's important about this is disposability. Whether you throw it in the garbage or recycle it has a key benefit, is you can buy anywhere and dispose anywhere, right? So your recycling bin is agnostic to where you bought that product. As long as it's recyclable, whether you bought it at a Target or a Walmart or at a small independent store, you can put it in the recycling bin. But reuse isn't like that, right? So take, in the US, scaled up reuse platforms that work. Propane tanks, are a huge reuse ecosystem. 5-gallon water is a huge reuse ecosystem. Even a beer keg, just as to name a few random examples of reuse at scale. But what's the problem? You can't take the propane tank to the beer place. You can't take the beer keg to the water place, and you see the problem, right? These are effectively mono supply chains. Now, that's very problematic if you want to have a consumer live their life with hundreds of products in reusables, because how can you remember everything and like keep that all in track? So what's really important for Loop is this idea of creating this physical network, this infrastructure where you can buy anywhere and return anywhere, buy online, return in store, buy at store A, return to store B. And so with the retailers going in store, this is a massive step in that direction, where in the US by end of this year, you will see, Walgreens in store, Kroger in store, Burger King, all the way to even, like Ulta Beauty and so on. And then you can start, buying, product A here and returning it there, and really making it very, very simple and effectively, creating the waste management network of reuse, because there is no reuse waste management company, which is what we're trying to achieve. And this all takes the courage and leadership of brands who believed in us in the very beginning. And then how do we scale that by really creating that infrastructure? And that's really what 2021 is all about.
Yep, I definitely agree. And I think that there needs to be incentivizes for consumers to really normalize themselves to buy reuse. I think that Loop having the online delivery service where the tote is delivered to your own home. There's also the expansion of stores. So people who may not really want to opt in for those services go, generally most consumers go to in stores to buy products. So this is something that I see really people investing in, especially younger generations that are in millennials and Gen Zers. Mera, I've been obviously a huge fan too of Soaply, being on the Loop platform and using it myself here in my own home. Can you share the story about Soaply and like how you found yourself to be partnered with Loop?
Yeah, so it's Soaply, which we say that we don't care how you pronounce it as long as you buy it, we're happy. But the idea is we supply you with soap and supply others as well. So in terms of our brand story, I first had the idea for Soaply when I was actually living and working over in East Africa, working around water, sanitation, and hygiene, and saw this gap around hand washing specifically. And really, I could go on and on about the global need for hand washing, but we've all heard about it this year. What's crazy is that, and really a stat that changed my life and set me on this mission with Soaply, is learning one stark fact. It's depressing, but at that time, 1.7 million children under the age of 5 were losing their lives because of diseases we could prevent entirely through the simple act of hand washing. Today, 2 billion people still do not have access to hand washing. That is crazy. This is a simple luxury that simply we're not thinking about. And Soaply is really a simple solution. You wash your hands every day, you might as well help us solve a global problem. When it comes to, working with Loop and how we think about sustainability and how we think about impact, we don't just think about global impact in the form of how do we fund water, sanitation, and hygiene initiatives, right? And we do that by tying every ounce of soap sold to a direct donation. But we also say, this is a product that we all need. And there are very few products in the world that that's the case with, right? So what do we all need as humans? We all need water, we all need food, and we all need hygiene. And starting with something so simple, soap, right? We all wash our hands. It impacts us directly. It goes directly on our skin, right? It can be absorbed directly into our bodies. It also goes directly down our drains into our waterways, into our ecosystems. And when you're done with that product, it goes into hopefully the recycling bin on the way to TerraCycle, or into the oceans, right? Or into our trash system. And for us, this idea of how do we look at sustainability really holistically? How do we make sustainability part of every choice from day one? And that's been the case. From day one, sustainability has been core to every decision we've made. And that's been true since before we took our first sale, over 4 years ago. And today, I think, as we looked at the opportunity to work with Loop, I would say one thing that I'm really excited and proud of is that we actually got introduced to Loop through our customers who know us, get us, and said, hey, who you have to work with is Loop. And they made the introduction. And it was exciting to have that partnership come to life, because this is something we've been building from, like I said, day one, making sure that there was a product that was refillable and was reusable. And we had kind of worked out a lot of the kinks. So when we came to the table with Loop, we actually were able to launch with our flagship product. We didn't change anything. We were already bottled in recyclable glass. We already printed directly on the bottle, reducing packaging and waste. We were already meant to last 100 uses. And so not only were we able to onboard, but also we actually had the opportunity to share some of our learnings, which we had a few. The first version of Supply, I have to admit, I absolutely knew I wanted the label directly printed on the bottle, but we couldn't quite afford the correct ink that would cure to the glass. And so for the first few loving customers, they would basically hold our bottle and the label would come off in their hand, which we said was an awesome opportunity for them to upcycle, turn that bottle into a beautiful vase, which you still could do, but now it no longer rubs off in your hand, I'm happy to say. But truly to team up with Loop is a dream, because as a small company, we have a pretty ambitious vision. And our vision isn't just to, look at the global hand washing crisis and solve it, but it's also to look at what is the problem with our hygiene system and our consumer hygiene products, and how do we solve them? And as a small company, there's only so much you can do, right? We're a growing company. We're really proud of how much we've grown and how quickly we're growing. But what we're able to achieve alongside partners and with the help of Loop, it puts us at a position where we really would be looking years from now, what we could do right now with you all. And so for us, it's been really, really exciting having an opportunity to not only add expertise, but also learn, and to come to market with something that truly adds value and that we're really excited and proud to share with our customers and everyone listening in the world. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it's really awesome. And I think too, as you mentioned, a lot of small owned businesses are inspired to be more sustainable, or have been sustainable for so long. And how do we really build the bridge between the two large businesses and smaller businesses to join this, as Tom said, this coalition of these brands and organizations to kind of influence our consumers to be more sustainable living. And I think, as you mentioned, about Supply, about people using it, I think there's less reported cases this year for the flu, actually, because people are actually more cognizant, being more aware to apply, soap when they need to, or hand sanitizer. So that's really great to see that.
Yeah, it's been fun. One of the things that's interesting is we fund water sanitation and hygiene initiatives right now. Our impact is focused in Ethiopia, and generally we do behavioral change kind of instructions when we're on impact trips, on global impact trips. But this past year, I found that every partner we jumped on a call with, instead of asking about the soap and about the business side of stuff, they're like, can you teach us the proper way to wash your hands? And it turns out that no one is washing their hands right. Like 95% of individuals are not washing their hands properly, which is crazy, especially right now. We all know the steps, like, okay, yes, we wet, we lather, we scrub, we rinse, and we dry. But we're all missing these key parts. So I'll show you guys now to make sure everyone's going to be washing their hands perfectly after this. So the most frequently missed spots on your hands are right under your fingernails and in your nail beds, between your fingers, and you can do the little like steeple. As a kid, I think we all did that. And then all of my, I'm from Colorado, all my farmer and ranch hand friends love this one, but the other one is between your thumb and your fingers. And we call this one milking the cow. And then in your creases on your hand, and you can pretend you're juicing a citrus and get it there. So anyway, yeah, I divulge. I get to share that, yeah, I think that one of the things around sustainability, though, that has been exciting to see this year is just how interconnected all of these things are. And that a company like Supply and a company like Unilever, I think that the underlying theme here is that the size of the company doesn't matter. You can no longer afford not to put sustainability central to everything that you're doing. And I think that's a really exciting thing. I think that consumers are not only asking for it, they're demanding it.
Yep, definitely. Yep, I see myself too as one of those consumers asking and writing emails to large businesses to switch over or use Loop as a service. And Blandine, I remember Loop was preparing launch in Europe, and especially you mentioned about the in-store launch in Carrefour. Can you share Loop's journey in Europe from May 2019 to now?
Yes, absolutely. Before I do that, I'd like to say, Mera, it's a pleasure, and I draw a lot of energy from listening to you actually telling the story, and from many of our brand partners. I have to say, I think we share the same sort of passion to move the needle and make a difference in our business, no matter big or small. And I think it's a really from the as you say, the union of those different energies that we can make a huge difference. So thank you for that. So Isaias, to your question, yes. From May 2019 until now, we were in a pilot mode in an online platform, My Boutique Loop.fr in France, and then in the UK, as we just mentioned. I think the purpose of this pilot platform was very much to get a first consumer reaction, like a first view of the interest of consumers for reuse, which very early, very early on we found out was very strong, like a very strong response and desire for consumers to see this reuse coming to life. And in fact, I think for many, and I'm not too sure whether that's the case on your side of the world, but in Europe, deposit schemes have basically, our grandparents lived with those deposit schemes. It's for many consumers, they've known that from either a time they've experienced themselves or from the something that they experienced through their grandparents, and it feels like common sense. And many when actually Loop is returning, and now that it's physically in store, the first reaction for many is, finally, why did this disappear? Because it makes so much sense. Why would I actually bin a bottle that is made to be durable, like a glass or many other materials can be durable? So why would I put that in the bin? So yes, I'm digressing a little bit, but so very early on we knew that consumer response was very strong, and we basically use the last 12 months really to get in-store ready and to get our partners to be ready from a supply chain perspective. So all the, being able to have all the products in durable containers ready from our brand partners, and then from a retailer partner, making sure that all the systems are adjusted so that the product in durable containers can be displayed in the store, returned, deposit, refund, and then back to the, cleaned, of course, through us, and then back into the brands to be refilled times and times again. So this is the time that was needed to make it to integrate the Loop offer into the physical stores. But it's a very exciting one because, as Tom said, it's all about building the ecosystem of physical presence of Loop in different areas. So starting with Carrefour, but soon into restaurants or other distribution channels. And it's also about scale. In the Loop, in the pilot platform, we were reaching thousands of consumers, and it was meant to be small. It was just about testing the water. When we go into in-store and e-commerce, we are reaching hundreds of thousands of consumers. So there is obviously a sense of scale, which is huge. And as we do that, our brands are obviously very excited because they want to move from, producing a few products in durable containers, from moving, to having lines of productions and being able to scale up that model. That's something that we are obviously very passionate about, the scaling up, but so are our brand partners and our retail partners.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I think it's really exciting to see that. I think I remember learning about the history of plastics, and they're really new into society. They're not ancient. They weren't created thousands of years ago. And so a lot of the products that, grew up here in the US, a lot of them were filled with glass, aluminum, things that were actually recyclable, but we shifted into more cheaper productions because it was more benefiting for the corporations and GDP growth. So we look into these like dynamic events that have happened. And I guess this question is for everyone, but sometimes we're in conversations just with different businesses and small owned businesses, and large-owned businesses? And can change from the supply chain only be done through large businesses, or can it be done through smaller-owned businesses?
I'll start this one, but I think it's a very good question, and it has to be done through everyone, and both have different roles, right? So it may not be the same effect, but a very important one nevertheless. So, for example, on with Loop and TerraCycle as well, but it's very important that this type of platform is available to everybody, from the biggest companies, the P&Gs to Unilevers, all the way to even pre-revenue companies, that are just thinking about starting, so they can begin in a reusable ecosystem, and we adjust everything to make that work. But let's talk about what are the roles per se, right? Because everyone brings in something different to the table. With large organizations, and you've seen Loop, make a lot of announcements with very large companies, from McDonald's, to Woolworths in Australia, to different, Nestle and so on. And what they bring is scale, and scale is critical because the reuse movement is embryonic, and it has to compete right away with a very honed supply chain of single-use consumption. And it's almost like comparing an Olympic athlete, let's call that single use, to a child that is just learning how to walk. But yet, the consumer expectation is set at a very, very high level, and that's absolutely fine. So, what the larger organizations bring is this sheer understanding of scale. Also about the, pushing the quality levels on health and safety to unbelievable levels, so that, the way we clean, which is, we've very excited about a big global partnership we now have with Ecolab, which is the world's largest industrial cleaning provider, who cleans many of Loop's packages. But interesting to note, there are very few local regulations, but where we are setting incredible standards on allergen control, all the way to inspection of packaging, you name it, is because some of the organizations that can afford large QC, QA departments are helping push us there, and all doing it together. But we need to have diversity, and we need to make sure that the products that any consumer wants can be accessed, which it has to be for absolutely everyone. And so there's a lot of different roles, but I think everyone plays a role. And I think, in fact, smaller organizations have the luxury to be significantly more nimble, can also experiment with approaches that may be very difficult for a large organization to implement through its bureaucracy and processes. So, there's this great range of approaches, and it's critical that everyone is able to participate and push the ecosystem, because learnings come from all different corners. But we do need, and this is our overall philosophy, is the most democratic approach to reuse possible. One that meets consumers on their desire for fierce convenience, noting, throwing something away is very, very convenient, but also at the right value, so that, you don't have to spend more for a reusable product versus a single-use product. But then also, and this is where I think reuse can really push, is and win over disposability, is by moving a package from being a cost of goods sold, which is what it is today in single-use products, to a asset, which is what it is technically in reusable products, the ability to innovate, the ability to delight, the ability to use materials of higher quality that do things that you can't do in single-use products. And this, to me, is, I think, what's really exciting about reuse. And I believe the other, things like value absolutely can be attained, evidenced by, for example, the entire Canadian beer industry is on a reuse model. So is the entire beverage industry in Germany, doing so for relatively low price products at scale. So, but we also have to go fast. We don't have the luxury of time when you think about, the crisis we are living through from an environmental point of view. And so we have to do this quickly around the world, and meet people where they are. So it's a big task, but it can very much be achieved if we get everyone acting together in a shared vision.
I can certainly jump in here and speak to this a bit too. Supply is obviously not as big as Procter & Gamble at this point. And I think one of the challenges that I would say is also an opportunity is that as a smaller company, Tom, you spoke to this, but we have the ability to be flexible, to adapt quickly, to evolve, improve in very real time. There isn't the same bureaucracy that's there kind of holding us back or putting a time limit on or expanding the timeline. One of the things that isn't a challenge is that as a small company, you go to, for example, Supply is using food grade organic oils. And the truth is, as a small company, you can purchase organic, let's call it olive oil. And as a small company that might not have the money to have their own lab, you might not be able to test that product and ensure that what you're being sold is exactly what you're getting. And so for a company like Supply, what we did, and the truth is that a company the size of Supply and a company that is a household name, they face the same problem, and they're dealing with the problem in a different way. For Supply, we are certified made safe. We have a third-party certification that allows us to ensure that what's in our product, what's in our packaging is not only safe for you, but it's also safe for the environment. So there's a 360-degree lab test that's done to ensure that there isn't anything that's going to be harmful to you or our planet, and it won't bioaccumulate in our ecosystems. It's really important to us, and we have the ability to do that and to set that standard from day one. And I think that one of the things that consumers often talk to us about is price. And the truth is, as a company that is literally building a supply chain, I'm in a fulfillment center that we created this past year as we grew and had a need for, we're creating an entire supply chain. And to do that sustainably, it costs money. To buy really good plant food grade oils that are going to keep your skin happy and healthy costs money. We have soap makers that have been making soap for over 20 years. We call them our suds masters, and they deserve to be paid well, good wages, living wages. And to then make sure that your product is packaged with love and sent out, there are people behind that. And then we have a commitment to impact, and we're not going to say that doesn't exist. We have to pass that on, and that's part of who we are. And so creating a supply chain, it costs money. As you grow, you can sometimes lower those costs. And that's, the hope for Supply is we would love to bring our costs down. And I saw someone in the comments asking about price. And the truth is, right now, we're putting the cost forward that it actually costs us. And to create this supply chain costs money. And so I think that what you were talking about, Tom, is so true. As you work with others, as you grow, there's scale. And when there's scale, you can get COGS down, your cost of goods sold. And that's an exciting prospect. It offers growth, and it offers access, accessibility, all of these things that longer term are obviously part of, or maybe it's not obviously, but are very much part of our vision at Supply. And I know that we share that with Loop, and it's part of why we're so excited to be working with you all, is how do we just make it easier, more convenient, and accessible to the average consumer, because that's where you get adoption, right? We can all talk about the plastic problem all day, but at the end of the day, I'm in New York City and I walk the 10 blocks to the grocery store and I forgot my reusable tote. I might not walk back and get it. I might just take the bags that they put my groceries in and walk home. And I care more than I think the average consumer might. And so to me, it's realizing we're all human. We're all trying to do the right thing. How do we just make it easier?
Yep, I definitely agree. I think that we are paying for ethics. We are paying for the environment. And I think that as consumers ourselves, we've been so accustomed to artificially suppressed prices. And that is something that I feel that I think consumers need to start having larger conversations with, is that we can't always rely on just large businesses to lower the price, because that's a thing that we have to do as consumers, is to understand the ethics behind supply chains and what goes into it. And as Tom mentioned, there's different roles and ways that organizations operate. So that is something that kind of really we've been navigating about. And I guess
I want to jump in and just share one other kind of anecdotal tangent, I guess. But with soap, I think one of the things that's really interesting to me on my learning journey is I started a soap company. I never would have thought I was going to be selling soap all day, every day. But one of the things that I find really intriguing are the parallels between the immersion of plastics and the introduction of detergent soaps. And so plastics we saw enter the scene in the 50s, right? And it was exciting. And then we saw actually, maybe there's some negative things going on here. I don't love going on my beach vacation and seeing plastic everywhere. When it comes to soap, it turns out that detergents entered the scenes, and detergents are way cheaper, right? If you're used to paying like $2 for soap, that might not be soap. I would check out what's in it. And detergents are going to strip your skin. They're going to leave your hands super dry, irritated, especially right now. It's winter in the Northeast. And if your hands are like a little cracked, check out what soap you're using. It might be adding to that problem. So all of this to say, I think there's just this moment to say, sometimes when you look at a single thing, when you're hyper-focused, you can make these connections across supply chains. You can make these connections across partnerships, and you start to see these trends. And I think that the end trend that, Tom, you're talking about too, is just everything is connected. We're all in this together. That's it. Tangent over.
Yeah, no, definitely. I completely agree. And thank you so much for sharing that. Blandine, I guess we had a question from, the audience. Can you just share some details about the launch with Loblaw here in Canada, or if you know any information about that?
I'll take that one. Sorry, Blandine, if you don't mind. Yes, we're very excited that on February 1st, so just in a few days from now, Loop is launching in the Canadian market as the fourth market with the leading retailer in Canada, Loblaw. You'll be able to find out about it at loopstore.ca or through Loblaw. And this is similar to the first phase of our launch as we've done in the US now, in the UK and France. And we're just really thrilled to be bringing Loop up to Canada with Loblaw. And you will also see in Canada launches with Tim Hortons, Burger King. So really creating this type of supply chain up in the Canadian market. And for me, it's very proud because I'm originally Canadian as well. And then you'll see, just to give you a sense of what else is coming, launches in late March in Japan with Aeon, Australia later this year with Woolworths, and then also Germany later this year, early next. So we're really trying to create or bring Loop to as many places as possible. And Loop always, for anyone who's interested, starts as typically an online platform because it's a great way to get learnings and to make it available to everyone. And then from there, in-store model, it starts coming in store. So I know there's some questions in the chat window. Thank you all for your comments. Some folks asked, when is it coming into the US? It will be starting with Kroger in Portland, all their Portland stores under the Fred Meyer banner, late spring. And then in the summer with Walgreens in the New York area. And that's just the beginning. And then from there, you should expect more retailers and more geographic expansion as well, really aiming to be national as quickly as absolutely possible. If I may, just to, because I know we're going to be running out of time soon, I wanted to answer a couple of quick questions that have come through the comments, and thank you all for attending and especially for sharing the comments. A couple of folks asked questions around life cycle analysis, and so I wanted to just address that a little bit. So thank you for the folks who raised it. So first, Loop does have our own internal LCA team. We've done third-party reviewed life cycle analyses and so on. But here's the punchline, right? I first want to preface by there is no silver bullet in sustainability. So what that means is reuse is not a silver bullet. It works in many cases, but there are certain cases where it's not more efficient than single use. So here's the way to think about the life cycle analysis of single use versus reusables if you're contemplating doing so, whether through Loop or any other way that you would experience reuse. A single use package has the same environmental impact every time you buy it. So when you buy your first package, that's the same impact as the 5th time you buy that product or the 10th time you buy that product. So think of it as a straight horizontal line. Now, the impact of single-use packaging goes up if the package is heavier, less recyclable, those factors, and goes down if the inverse is true, lighter, more recyclable, so on and so forth. Now, a reusable bottle, like a wonderful glass bottle from Supply, goes in a curved direction. Right, so you have it goes down curved in impact because you don't have to keep making the bottle over and over. What you do have, though, you still have impact, which actually goes to the point where the best product is the one you don't buy, right? We're not going to consume our way out of this problem. We have to reduce consumption. But if you buy a reusable, you don't have to keep making that bottle again. So what you end up doing is dividing out the cost of the bottle almost to zero from an environmental point of view, or even economic one. And what you're left with is the cost of transporting and cleaning. That becomes what you compare against the cost of making a new bottle. Now, here's what's interesting is when does the curve intersect with the horizontal line, right? So in some package forms, like some of the work we're doing, say with like McCormick on hot sauces or barbecue sauces, those packages were already, say, in glass, and you don't have to change the package at all. You're just adding a reusable option onto it. And there's many products that look like that. Think, peanut butter in a glass container, or spices. Many times in a glass container is where these already exist, where the product already could be reused. There's just not a reusable ecosystem, which means on the first purchase, it is equal impact to the disposable. But by the second purchase, that bottle is already better and then keeps getting better. Then you have the examples where a company may move from, say, like a plastic shampoo bottle to a aluminum refillable shampoo bottle. So a plastic single-use to, say, an aluminum refillable. There, on the first purchase, the refillable is more environmentally costly because aluminum is a more environmentally expensive material than, say, plastic. In that example, they equal in impact by the third use. They'd have to be the same consumer buying it, just that bottle having had 3 trips. And then after, in that example, the third use, the reusable becomes better and maintains better. But there are examples where the intersect never occurs, where the reusable version is always going to be more costly environmentally than the single use, and those are the ones to be avoided. A hyperbolistic example could be like, imagine like a very efficient, very thin package for, say, potatoes, compared to putting, the same potatoes into a very heavy stainless steel tub, potentially that will never intersect. And we have to manage against not thinking that reuse is a fundamental silver bullet and focusing on the examples of the first two and avoiding the third example where those don't intersect. So that's very important from a life cycle analysis. The other thing that may be helpful, and then I'll stop here, is where is reuse relevant? Because it's not relevant for everything. All right. So from a relevance point of view, we found that reuse is relevant when you look at 3 factors, and the more the factors index, the more relevant. You don't have to index on all of them, but the more they index, the better. So the first is there an opportunity to improve the design of the product? Right, moving the package from being a cost to an asset, like a coffee cup, high opportunity to improve design from like a coated paper cup. Like you see, like for example, what Tim Hortons and Burger King and McDonald's have done. The cups are way more beautiful. But a high-end Swiss watch, I doubt you're going to improve the design at all. Right, so there'd be low relevance. Coffee cup, high relevance. The second question is there a major waste problem? With that product. The more there is a waste problem, like soap packaging generally has a waste problem, right? More reuse is relevant. While again, take that high-end Swiss watch, probably not really. No one's really complaining about Rolex watch waste on the ground, right? And so very low overall relevance. And then the third one is the length of time from purchase to when that object has a waste event. One of the neat things about garbage is everything one day ends as garbage. In fact, think of it this way. The garbage industry will one day own everything you possess today, with not a single exception. One day. And so if the object has a short time from purchase to waste event, like a coffee cup, could be 10 minutes, then it has very high relevance for reuse. While if the object, like that Swiss watch, may pass, from you to your kids to their kids and have a very long, even the Swiss watch will become waste at some point, but very long time frame, then very low relevance. And again, it's important that we don't, no matter what sustainability levers we're trying to use, think that there's a silver bullet, right? It's about an ecosystem of solutions to meet the incredible complexity of the world we live in. Now, there is only one silver bullet, though. And I'll conclude this sort of soapbox, standing on my soapbox here for a moment, is not buying. That is the only silver bullet to sustainability. And in fact, the major question that I think we, or especially our kids, will have to ask is that we cannot consume our way into intrinsic sustainability. Mind you, circular economy is not intrinsic sustainability, right? We have to really think about lowering our appetite, because anytime we buy a product, we're voting for farming. we're voting for mining. No matter if the product is the best version of the product, we are fundamentally voting for impact on the planet. And we have to think about this. I'm a hypocrite. You could see there's stuff in my room. It's very difficult, but we have to really think about that, because in the end, that is the one silver bullet to sustainability, is a fundamental a reduction of what we consume.
Well, thank you so much, Tom, on that. I think this is really critical conversations that everyone should learn about and know about, because I think that sustainability is not something that is easily defined. It is something that takes intergenerational years of work to kind of really understand the aspects of it and how it operates. And I think really to close off this event is looking into 2021, right? The future of Loop. And Blandine, I actually wanted to say, what is the future for Europe? I know that you mentioned that there's a huge investment in people just really valuing the product. Does that look into brand diversification? Does that look into lowering the cost? Does that look at testing new sites?
Yes, thank you very much. Indeed, I think you've touched on some of the key priorities that we have. I think the first one is we've talked about scale, and scale means more products. It's a matter of choices, and we want consumers to find their favorite products in reusable. So scale in terms of more products. The second part is scale in terms of more stores. So today we are in 10 stores. We want to get to 100 stores and more than that in the coming months. So that will be a big priority for both, for Europe, both France and then soon after that, the UK. Sorry, I had something else in my mind which I wanted to share, but I'll come back to it. I guess the other part is making sure that we with that scale will come the optimizing the efficiency of our model. And you've talked about bringing the cost down, and Mera mentioned that as well. We have to single use has been through 50 years of optimizing their system, and we are competing to a very sort of optimized system, and our role is to go as fast as possible into that phase of optimizing the reuse system. And when it comes to costs, when it comes to our supply chains, making sure that we go into that as fast as we can.
Am I up? I think that, Tom, your little one was a perfect introduction into the screen as we talk about 2021 and looking ahead. And I think for us, Loop is playing a critical role in some of our growth in 2021. We're really excited for Monday and launching in Canada. And we have some additional upcoming launches with you all that we're quite excited about. And we've been busy in 2020 formulating and testing, and we have some very exciting things coming, exciting partnerships and products and all sorts of things. So stay tuned. I also have to plug that Supply is hiring. We are growing and we can't keep up. And we just, thank you. We just posted 3 additional jobs yesterday. So if you are someone who wants to come change the world with us, we want you to come change the world with us. Please apply, and you'll get to work with amazing partners like Loop and awesome people. So hopefully, this is the beginning of what collectively will be a transformational year. And I think that we talked about this at the beginning, or touched on it, which is, I think there's this moment that we're all kind of feeling, which is we all have retreated and we miss people, and we realize how much it matters. People matter, you matter. And coming back to that, these decisions we're talking about, sustainability for you, your mental health, how do you keep going? If you're listening to this, you've been retreating and trying to figure out, how do I show up as my best self? Because the world needs you. And I think that people are tired. I'm tired. This year was crazy. If you want to know what it's like to lift 3,000 pounds of soap and walk it up to an office building in New York City, I can now unfortunately tell you after last year, sending out soap bottles 18 hours a day. That was what a lot of my year last year looked like. And I think that the focus that those of us on this call and those of you tuning in have on creating a better future for, Tom's little one that just popped in, and everyone. I think that hopefully, if Supply can play a role or partner with anyone, we want to. I think that it takes all of us working together and building these authentic communities of individuals who care. That's how, one person at a time, one action at a time, one wash at a time, that's how we create change.
Folks, I want to thank everyone for coming together. I know we're at time for this, so thank you all especially for the fellow co-panelists, but everyone attending, thank you so much. And our deep apologies if we couldn't answer the questions that you thoughtfully asked. We really look forward to the next opportunity to do so. And thank you for attending. And no matter where in the world you are, wish you a good morning or good afternoon, and look forward to the next time our paths can cross virtually or in person. I want to thank everyone for their time today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.